Welcome to the sound of the start of the season. If you're a Sky Bet Championship fan, this is the Not the Top 20 podcast betting show. It's brought to you by Sky Bet. And this episode is a betting preview, as we did last week for League One and League Two, looking at Sky Bet's season-long markets in the Championship. I'm Ali Maxwell. This is George Elek. And as I said last week, but for the benefit of any new listeners or viewers, this show is George and I chatting to each other about the bets that we're having and showing our working as well. Betting is for over 18s only and can come with risks. So head to gambleaware.org to learn about those risks. But certain things to think about would be never bet more than you can afford to lose, never chase your losses, be sensible and disciplined with your staking. Next week, we'll begin the regular betting show, looking to make picks and pick winners in the weekend EFL action. But for now, let's get into the top of the Championship when it comes to the season-long markets, George. So I'm thinking winner, promotion, top two, that sort of arena. What screams out at you in the Championship?
Well, okay. In the outright market, which is the winner market, very little, I would say. I think there are a lot of unknowns in the Championship that makes it quite hard to find value. What I would say is that Sky Bet are the only firm who are paying 4 places. And that, their trading team probably won't thank me for saying this, opens up, I think, an opportunity with Ipswich Town, who are the 3-1 favourites. Now, 3-1 each way is a fifth to 4 aren't for everybody, and I completely accept that. I'm sure that Sky Bet would be pretty happy not to take too many bets on that too, because it's a bit of an each way steal. It's quite hard for me to see Ipswich out of the 4. But what it is quite handy for is a nice each way tricksy between the 3. And obviously we've seen League One and League Two. We've seen some football now to help us work out who is good and who is bad. And there's one team in League One that I think have drifted out in the market, and I see absolutely no reason why that should have been the case, except for the fact they lost their game.
Can I guess who it was?
Yeah.
Bolton Wanderers.
Yeah, I sent you a screenshot before we recorded. Bolton are 14-1 now to win the league. And, that might be a tall order, but they acquitted themselves incredibly well away at a Stockport side that we really fancy, a Stockport side who are third favourites for the title. They were by far the better team in the first half and should never have gone in at half-time level, let alone behind. And this is a relatively new Bolton side with Stephen Schumacher in charge for the first time for a full season. And I think the signs there were really, really strong. So given they're 14-1, a fifth to 4, given that Luton didn't really impress on opening day, given that Stockport, even in that game, didn't really impress, I think that is an interesting one for a single and probably also for a multi, which we're doing here. And then Barnet, who we put up last week in our League One and League Two preview, who lost on opening day at home to Fleetwood. But again, no real alarm bells in my mind at all about the performance. They still look really good in possession. They created some decent chances. The first goal came from a goalkeeping error, which I'm sure they will iron out. They've drifted in the market from 18-1 out to 22-1. Sky Bet, best price and best place terms about Barnet. So Ipswich, Bolton, Barnet, each way tricksy. So that's 4 doubles and a treble. With the extended place terms is the way that I'm looking to play this. But your initial question was, who are you really keen on? And there's one team who I cannot get away from in terms of thinking they are set for a massive season, who are being forgotten. But how to go about making the most of that from a betting proposition is quite difficult, because that team is Leicester City.
Yeah.
And Leicester are being, as far as I can tell, are being seen to be the worst of the 3 relegated teams, regardless of points deduction. And I can't really understand why that's the case. They picked up the most points of the 3 relegated teams. They have the vast majority of the players who played a key part of their title-winning season 2 years ago still there. They've added a lot of players last summer, and they've barely lost anyone yet. They are going to lose players, but I think we've also seen a couple of interesting links recently. We've seen them linked to Josh Brownhill. We've seen them linked to Sam Greenwood. Like, if these are the calibre of players they've been linked to, I think they're going to be pretty decent additions rather than, they may not be big fees, but certainly players who should be of benefit to them in the long run. Now, because of the possible points deduction, I think there's some kind of finger in the air stuff going on when it comes to Leicester and how to price them. And for that reason, the 12-1 about them to win the league doesn't appeal at all, because realistically they could get a 12-point deduction and then you're going to really struggle. But I think because the outright price is so big, it means that all their other prices are probably too big. Like, they're 4-1 for promotion and they're 6-4 to finish in the top 6. And when you consider how the kind of spread of points between the top end of the championship down to 6th, it's normally huge. There's normally a huge gap between title winners and those that finish 6th. I'm talking 20, 30 points.
32 points last season between Leeds and Burnley on 100 and Bristol City, who made it into 6th on 68.
Yeah, so, in terms of top 6 price, you've got Ipswich, who are 100 to 30 on, so shorter than 3 on with Sky Bet in order to finish in the top 6. Saints, who are 2 on. Even if there is a deduction, we kind of 6 to 12 points seems to be the bracket that people are talking about. Even if it's the top end of that at 12, if Leicester end up being on par with most relegated teams that come out of the Premier League, then they'll finish in the top 6 still, even after that deduction. And then similarly, I think the 4 to 1 is value because the top 2 is obviously a big chance, even with the deduction. But also, if they finish in the top 6, which I think they will, and they're in the playoffs, then they'll be favourites for the playoffs. You have to expect, depending on what happens between now and the end of the season, but given the quality of their squad, you would think so. I think Cifuentes is a good manager. I think a really solid manager to come into arguably the most talented group of players in the whole league. And I just think because there's uncertainty, their place in the outright market means that their place in other markets is wrong, and they should be shorter in both of those two.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with everything that you've said, really. I'm struggling to decide between Ipswich and Southampton, who I think will be the top 2 personally. I'm struggling to decide what I think the value is between those two. Ipswich, the shorter price, the logical favourites when I weigh everything up with my head. And Southampton, I just have a feeling in my loins that it could be quite special, but I don't really like making loin-based bets. So I'm going to leave that alone for the moment. And it's also like, I'd love to put up someone from the chasing pack, the sort of best of the rest category, someone to truly challenge. But I'm really struggling to make a case for someone to get 90 plus points, and that's likely what you'll need to challenge the top 2 based on the last few seasons. I don't think that Sheffield United will be able to replicate what was 92 points that they got last season, 90 with the deduction. Coventry, I think, could improve on 69, from last season. That included a poor start to the season. But am I talking improvement to the tune of 25 points to get to 94? It feels like a stretch to me. Bristol City finished 6th, and I don't expect them to get any better than that. In fact, quite the opposite. And of the rest, again, to back someone for the title and to expect them to challenge, you'd be looking at any team from outside last season's top 6 to be improving to the tune of like 35 points. Or no, 25 to 30 points. And for me, that is just unrealistic. So, looking at top 6, top half markets where you bring a few others into play. This I find interesting, George, because Leicester 6 to 4 top 6. If you're looking to do maybe some cross-divisional multis, I think that represents value. As we talked about on the 1 to 24s, even with a 12-point deduction, which I think might be the max that it could be, a team like Leicester, even if they picked up 85 points and were just below a top 2 level, would likely still drop into the top 6. I also think that 6th spot being quite a low points tally as it was last season, for me reflects that the bottom of this division has got stronger and better. Therefore, I think it's harder for playoff chasing teams to accumulate a higher level of points. I think it's more spread out between the teams between like 5th and 22nd, basically. And so I think that leads to lower points tallies for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, etc. And it makes it easier for a team like Leicester, if we expect them to be pretty damn good, to make it in, even with a deduction. But I find that the top 6, top half, one of the things I find interesting from a betting point of view is that Birmingham are being priced up as around the 4th best team by Sky Bet in most markets, and Wrexham, who've come up from League One, are being priced up as around the 10th best team in the division as we record, and that they might get more bullish on Wrexham if they add even more bodies. So if you're not sure on those 2 teams flying right to the top of this division, there might be some opportunities.
Yes, I mean, I looked long and hard at the Wrexham relegation price, which is 11 to 1 with Sky Bet. 12 to 1 with Sky Bet. And I just, even though it feels like an incredible opportunity to be backing a team that came 2nd in League One with not a massive points tally to be relegated at that price in the Championship, like taking out Wrexham, taking out all the noise, everything else, like that is the general quality of a team that normally does that. You're going to be getting half the price, like max at best. But with Wrexham spending power, and the quality of certain players, Lewis O'Brien being one of them, Windass being another one. It is worth saying that Josh Windass was part of a Sheffield Wednesday team that looked like they were going to get relegated 2 seasons ago. Like it isn't like these players are too good to be playing for teams that struggle. But if they are struggling, then I would have thought the managerial change they would make will be pretty impressive. I would have thought January will probably be pretty impressive, and they probably have the muscle to get themselves out of it. I'd much rather be a backer of Wrexham relegation though than Wrexham top 6 or to win the title or anything like that at this stage. No disrespect for them, purely a price thing. I just think their place in the market doesn't look right to me. With Birmingham, I think it's just got to be a case of let's see. Like, I think Friday night's going to be really interesting, where they are at home to the team who are the favourites, to a team who haven't changed that much, with a manager who finished second in this league just over 12 months ago. I think it's really hard to work out how good Birmingham were at the back end of last season. It's quite hard to work out how good quite a lot of their signings are. I think with a couple, we know they're very good. I think we will find out really quickly on Friday night. Obviously things can change. Like if they're poor and they lose 2-0, that's not to say they're going to be poor. But what level they start at, I think this is going to be really interesting. I think it's just a watching brief, because there is a chance that they could be the best team in the league. There's also a chance they might be a mid-table team. And the opportunities will arise off the back of that.
What do you like in the top 6, top half markets?
I think Millwall look overpriced. Now, often these markets, to my amateur eye, look like there's so much kind of reputation factored into price, and I don't think that's necessarily right. Like with Millwall last season under Alex Neil, they were a phenomenally good side. And to be honest, their underlying numbers in the first half of the season, when they weren't that good, were pretty strong. They have strengthened over the course of the summer. They brought in some good signings. They finished just outside the playoffs last season. So why they're perceived to only have a 20% chance of finishing the top 6 this time around, I'm not entirely sure. 5-1, which is joint top price in the market with Sky Bet, looks a bit of value to me. I'd also be interested in Swansea as well at 6-1, another team who finished just outside the playoffs, another team who finished last season strong, who've signed some decent players. It does kind of feel to me, unlike other seasons, where like going into last season, we knew Leeds were going to be good. We thought the Burnley were probably going to be good. It felt like there wasn't much room, I guess, for teams making a run into the playoffs. This time around, it feels like the kind of general quality of a lot of the fancy teams is a bit less set in stone, and it wouldn't be a huge surprise if they're not as good. There was that season a couple of years ago when Norwich and Watford both finished mid-table after their relegation. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen, but I do think this looks like it might be a bit more open at the top end, in which case teams like Millwall, Swansea, it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see them not only knocking on the door again, but forcing their way into the reckoning.
Yeah, you've mentioned Millwall, and I do think the 11-10 top half is good value, albeit it's not something personally that I'd be wanting to lock down season-long money on as a single. The 5-4 for Derby, I would have been desperate for that to be a little bit longer because I've got a good feeling about them, but I probably wouldn't see 5-4 as massively exciting. They may have some restrictions just in terms of player quality and, frankly, injuries to start the season that they have. At a longer price for the top half, I'm going to take Charlton at 11-4, understanding that it's a long shot and they're one of the least likely per this market to make the top half. This is basically a pure bet on the power of Nathan Jones. My admiration for what he can do at football clubs is full to the brim, shall we say, and I don't think that Jones taking Charlton from League One to the Championship is in any way the end of the story here. I think there's more chapters in this, and I'm more into their transfer business than George is. I think they've prioritised players that, yes, they are unproven at this level, but at the very least, I feel they very clearly have been signed to suit the current tactical system rather than just signed because they think they're good League One players, as most of them were last season. And in most cases, the physical aspect, the athleticism that they have, the intensity that they're able to play at, as I saw it in League One, I think means they should be able to handle the speed of the league as well. This is all really important stuff for Charlton at Championship level. I had them 13th, Charlton, in my own personal 1-24. So I think the 11-4 for 12th, if that's where I think they might finish, suits me pretty nicely. Charlton at 11-4 top half is my selection around this region. Go on.
I don't hate the 11-4 Charlton relegation. It's the same price as top half, and this is more. I do agree with you, and this is one where again I'd want to watch them the price won't move that much. Like, on opening day, if they get beat 2-0 at home to Blackpool, they're not going to suddenly be 15-8, 7-4. I don't think, unless other teams around them are better than we expect. It's just another case where, similar to Wrexham, it's like you've got a team that got promoted out of the playoffs from League One, who, yes, have a very good manager, but if you look through their squad, is a lot of players with a lot to prove at the level. And normally a team like that, such as Oxford last season, aren't going to be 11-4 for relegation before a ball's kicked. Like they're the same price as Hull, they're the same price, or just a little bit bigger than Oxford, a little bit shorter than QPR. These are teams who I think have done more to prove their potential kind of staying power maybe than Charlton. Albeit Charlton maybe have the higher upside this season as well.
They don't have Nathan Jones, those teams.
No, they've got Gary Rowett and Sergej Jukanovic. And I think Preston, though, are the standout value in the relegation market at 9-2 with Sky Bet. Now, we put this up in the Long Shot, which is our betting subscription Substack offering. So I won't go into too much there, but there are loads of stuff we put up there over the course of pre-season. It's a weekly email every Monday that goes out on our Substack. It's £20 per month. If you want to subscribe, you can find details of that. We'll post them on our Twitter and social media pages. But it's a case of Preston finished last season just outside the relegation zone. They were odds on for relegation, I think, or they were favourites for relegation going into final day. And they've lost a couple of key players, Emil Rees being one of them. They've got Hecky in charge, who managed them for the second half of last season and, did okay, but nearly took them down, apart from a good showing on final day. I can't really work out why they're being priced. They've been they've been around. They've been around the relegation zone for season on season. Their budget would have them around the relegation zone. I'm not entirely sure why they are priced up as if they are comfortably better than Oxford, Hull, Charlton, QPR. They're the same price as Pompey. Not for me. They should be bang in the middle of that group at kind of 11-4, 5-2.
Yeah, I like Preston. Blackburn's price catches my eye because I think that they might tumble down the table this season. Stoke's price catches my eye. Hull City, we had finishing 23rd in the 1-24s. They're 11-4. It's probably not the juiciest price. At a longer price, and recognising that this is a bit of a long shot, I'm going to back Watford to be relegated at 13-2. Or for the purposes of explaining my reasoning, I'm just going to call them What If Watford.
What if Ford?
For the next...
Are you also going to put them up for promotion too?
Maybe eventually. It depends, really. So what if Watford? I really think they are one of the teams in the Championship that have the highest range of possibilities here, and that could be on the positive end, but I think it could be on the other end as well. So what if Paulo Pezzolano is a bust, and that managing in Uruguay and Brazil and in Spain's second tiers isn't culturally or tactically similar to the Championship? What if a loser or Chakvetadze leave before the end of the window? Two standout players for the division in their respective positions. What if Kwadwo Barr's hamstrings mean that he can only play around 1,500 minutes again, which is less than half of total minutes, which limits the impact that he can have with his impressive skills? What if their new group of young attackers, all signed from overseas, don't adapt quickly and perhaps lose confidence or are moved on in January and have to be replaced in January by loans, or Emmanuel Dennis on a free, for example, is what it normally is? What if, basically, the team that picked up the fewest points in this league in the second half of last season and posted poor numbers pretty much throughout the season, what if that wasn't just because of Tom Cleverley, but because of something at a club level and at a squad level and at a team level? What if they are that poor again, and the hot streak that they enjoyed in the first 2 months of the season doesn't happen again this season? Well, I think if some or all of those boxes are ticked, the 13-2 will look like very good value. But equally, and I'm kind of hopeful that I'm wrong, because I think Watford, Vibes FC, as I see it, one of the most fun teams on paper before the start of the season, and I hope that they carry that onto the field. and are as exciting as it looks like they could be. But I think for the reasons that I've laid out, the 13-2, is a bit of a long shot, and I like that price for relegation. Top goal scorer in the Championship. We've had some quite fun winners over the last few years. Pirot ended up winning it late on last season, kind of almost in spite of himself, playing for the best team that scored so many goals and only just about getting to, 18 goals in the end? Very low goals tally. And then in previous seasons, we had Smodics and Akpom winning at triple figure prices. Neither of them out and out number 9s, just like Pirot isn't or wasn't. So I find this market fascinating, George. And also you get the sort of added shenanigans around this time every season of the 3 teams that come down from the Premier League generally having quite a lot of standout names in attacking areas and not always that much clarity on who will start and who will leave before the end of the window. But generally the top of the market is quite dense with these sorts of names. So Ipswich, Southampton and Leicester players.
Yeah, and I've picked kind of 2 from that group. Nothing at a bigger price really appealed. But I think Tom Cannon is interesting, and he's 18-1. Said he's struggled to kind of have a consistent full season playing for the same team, basically. But in bursts, he scored a lot of goals. He had that spell in 22-23, the back end of the season, where he scored 8 in 20 games for North End. But that started slowly, and a lot of those 8 goals came in a kind of cluster at the end of the season. He then got his move to Leicester, but struggled to break into the team in the second half of the season. He had a loan at Stoke in the first half of last season, scored 9 goals in the first half of the campaign, and then was was bought by Sheffield United, where he was kind of in and out of the side because, as ever, Chris Wilder had so many strikers to choose from, and he couldn't really get regular minutes. I think he will this season. My hunch is that Tyrese Campbell may start the season as their starting striker, but I think Cannon might end up being the main man. Also helpful, he can play off the left-hand side as well, so him and Cannon can both. So him and Campbell can both play. I think at 18-1 he appeals. And then I think there's obviously a big risk that he's going to move on. But Patson Daka is 18-1 to be top scorer in the Championship, and he's currently Leicester's only striker. And Leicester host Sheffield Wednesday on opening day. Like, there has to be a world here where Daka, who has been really prolific, I mean, I know that Leicester he hasn't been, and he definitely divides opinion amongst their fans, but has been prolific early in his career elsewhere. And there's got to be a chance that he gets off to an absolute flyer on Sunday if everything goes ahead with the game. And if he does, score a brace or score a hat trick or something, then suddenly he's going to be right up at the top end of the market. And they'll probably be quite keen to keep him, and his whole Leicester career might change. So it comes with a caveat that I guess they might bring in strikers and he might move on. But I think given the situation at the moment in terms of having no competition for his spot, he makes appeal.
Yeah, Haji Wright has always been at the back of my mind in this market from the start of last season, where I really think if Wright hadn't picked up an injury that kept him out for a good few months, he would have won this market. Now, you could probably say that about a few other players, in particular Josh Sargent, who I like as well. If I knew that Sargent was going to stay and play for Norwich all season, I'd be really, really interested in him at 16-1, sorry. But I think Wright will definitely stay at Coventry all season. I think at 14-1, he probably appeals the most to me. His 0.51 goals, non-penalty goals per 90, 0.55 goals per 90 was very similar to Tyrese Campbell, who led that at 0.57. Latelath and Joel Perreault, 0.56. Neither of them in the league anymore. And Sargent, 0.54. So there was a clutch of players who all were scoring at a very similar rate. None of them at a super high rate. And I'm just not sure that Tyrese Campbell, as much as I love him in front of goal, is going to be able to play enough minutes here to challenge the very top of the market. But I think that Haji Wright can. I also think that his rate might rise from last season, where he often played off the left. But Mason Clark's back from injury now, and I think with him on the left, Sakamoto on the right, they have options. Lampard at the top of the pitch with Ellis Sims, Brandon Thomas-Asante, Norman Bassett. But I think that Wright is the one that probably has the most trust in front of goal from the fan base and possibly from Lampard as well at the moment. And there's no particular reason why he couldn't play as the number 9. So for me, at the moment, Haji Wright is my pick at 14-1 top goal scorer in the Championship. Before we get into some weekend picks, on the Sky Bet site, on the Championship section, on the outrights, they've put together some sort of multiple team specials as well packaged up within the Championship ahead of kickoff this weekend. I've backed 3 of them, which I'm going to tell you about. One of them at 4-1 is Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton to finish in the top 6. For the reasons that we laid out earlier, we think all 3 are likely to be strong, and we're not even sure of the sort of best of the rest being able to challenge. So Saints, Ipswich, Leicester to finish top 6 at 4-1. The other 2 at longer prices. Ipswich to win the league, which we had as our champions in the 1-24, their favourites for the title. Southampton to be promoted, and Leicester to finish in the top 6. So sort of variation on a theme there. That's at 22-1. And then at 25-1, slightly different. Ipswich to win the league, Coventry to finish in the top 6. I do think that they will repeat the trick and should be one of the best of the rest, finish in the top 6. And Oxford United to be relegated at 25-1.
How dare you?
Is that trio on the multiple team special section on the Sky Bet site. We had Oxford in the bottom 3
Only
on
I'm
our
allowed to do
1-24s.
Time for our selections now ahead of this weekend in the Sky Bet Championship, League 1 and League 2. We moan quite a lot on this show. I certainly do, about our luck. But we got both our naps up last week. Mine was Walsall, who were 1-0 up, had a man sent off. Rearguard action, and they conceded a weird penalty late on, and I was cursing, I was messaging you, getting angry.
Every time.
And then Walsall scored 10-man Walsall scored a winner, and I was happy. And Luton to 0. Didn't really create much, didn't really like it was happening. Although I did watch it with our esteemed friend and colleague Dave Walker, and I said halfway through the second half, this is going to end up 1-0 to Luton.
Bingo.
And I could have seen the own goal coming. So yeah, got both those up. BTTS in both halves did not come off in the Peterborough against Cardiff game. And you got your nap up as well.
Yeah, Wigan 21-20, I think it was. A very cosy home win against Northampton. So excited for this weekend. Next weekend, the sort of betting show proper, if you like, will start with a solid structure each week, which we'll work through over the next 40 weeks or so. But for now, I'm just going to flag up certain things that stand out to us across the 3 leagues this weekend. Before we get into the Championship, I want to flag up something that I think could be really interesting from a non-betting and also from a betting point of view. Watch out for penalties. Okay, we spoke about it on the Monday pod. Across League 1 and League 2 last weekend, what did we see a lot of? Penalties given at set-piece situations for the sort of no-look tugging and holding that generally hasn't been penalised to this level. And we know that part of PGMOL's briefing to clubs pre-season focused on this. You will be penalised if you are holding an attacking player and you are not looking at the ball or attempting to play the ball. That happens loads. And even if the players have been told about it, they sometimes slip into bad habits. We saw, I think, at least 3 of those across 2 divisions last weekend. So what do we know about these sorts of new directives? They tend to go pretty hard at them in the first few weeks of the season to try and sort of set them in stone. And so I'd say from a betting point of view, if you've got a good handle on who's taking penalties for each team in the 3 leagues, particularly if they're midfielders or defenders and their anytime price might be not taking it into account, it could be worth a look. This sort of grappling penalty, which we might see a fair bit of this weekend. So there you go. There's my public service announcement. In the Championship, I've backed Charlton to beat Watford at home. The biggest crowd at the Valley since 2008. According to esteemed South London journalist Rich Corley. I'd love to be there because I think it's going to be rocking and I expect a fast start from Charlton under Jones. They finished last season in some form. I don't really see why they would need any time to get back up and running in terms of their performance level. Whereas Watford, we don't know exactly how coherent they're going to look on opening day. They've got a lot of new attacking players. Chakvetadze has been out and maybe touch and go for this one. Lots of players at the top end of the pitch adapting to the league for the first time. And I think Charlton away is a bit of a baptism of fire, the intensity that they play with. So I think the 29-20, 2.45 the decimal, represents good value here. Championship? Anything? No.
No.
Well, let me tell you then about Stoke 0, Derby 0. It's my other bet in the Championship this weekend at 7-1. This is quite Derby-centric, and I'm going to say it now. I'm going to be looking to back 0-0 in Derby games as long as the price is right for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season because they are missing a lot of players, particularly at the top end of the pitch. But the way that Eustace plays and the way that Derby defended in the last few months of last season, where they conceded a goal a game or maybe even less, insane defensive numbers in his first few months, I don't suddenly see them looking to cut loose because it's a new season and they're overexcited. I think quite the opposite. I think particularly away from home, they will massively play for low margin games, basically play for a 1-0 win where we nick a goal from the set piece and very little else happens. And I think they'll be fairly effective at that. Stoke have lost Berger, a few incomings, few outgoings. I'm not 100% sure what they're going to look like, but I think Derby could frustrate them. So I'm backing the 0-0 at 7-1.
I think someone's reading our WhatsApps.
What?
Because I sent you...
I thought they're meant to be the most encrypted messaging service on this green earth.
I sent you my nap just over 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
And it was 23-20, and it's now odds on, which is a shame. So it's my nap that is slightly less strong now because of the price. But Tranmere to beat Shrewsbury. Mm-hmm. Now 19-20 with Sky Bet kind of being backed as we record. Tranmere were pretty impressive, I thought, in their away game against Colchester. On opening day, they were 1-0 up early and conceded late to a very good goal from Colchester, but they were solid against a Colchester side who are pretty well fancy going into the season. As I said in the 1-24s and in our pre-season content, I'm pretty worried about Shrewsbury. Their opening day 0-0 draw didn't do much to alleviate my concerns. I think if Tranmere show up in the way they finished last season under Andy Crosby and the way they played on Saturday, I think they should make pretty light work of them.
Yes. All the prices quoted on this show are subject to change because there's a bit of a turnaround time between recording and putting it out, but they are all correct as of time of recording. In League One, I instantly looked for Stevenage at home to Rotherham, George, because I'm all Stevenage all the time at the moment, and also mainly because of Rotherham's defensive absences. But I found the 8-11 too short to back, sadly. But I've backed Burton at Barnsley.
Interesting.
A 12-5 draw no bet. Now, you will be able to tell me, better than I will be able to tell the listeners, that the Barnsley-Argyle game last weekend saw an absolutely insane swing towards the start of the game or towards kickoff. Pro-Barnsley, anti-Argyle.
Which is it?
Well, which is it? Then Barnsley win 3-1. And it seems to me like people have gone like, yeah, okay, so it's both Argyle bad and Barnsley good.
Yeah.
Because Argyle are a massive price at Bolton and Barnsley are a very short price here at home to Burton. Burton who beat Mansfield 2-1.
But also big Burton drift on Saturday too.
Big Burton drift. They only went and won against Mansfield. Barnsley are in a new form, aren't they, under Conor Hourihane? There's been a fair amount of turnover, not loads, but I think in the style of play in particular. They obviously won at Argyle, which is a really standout result, but 3 goals absolutely gifted to them. Even Barnsley fans that I spoke to weren't necessarily getting carried away because they kind of understood what they had just seen. I don't think the performance itself completely blew away Argyle, right? So this is a starting 11 at the moment with some square pegs in round holes, I think, because they've changed tactical system and they've been building a team to play 3 at the back and wing backs for multiple windows, so it's taking them some time to move to a kind of 4-3-3. Whereas I think Burton, even in losing Burrell and Bodvarsson at the top of the pitch, I think they're broadly the same as the end of last season where Gary Bowyer had them an incredibly coherent team with incredibly coherent tactical setup. They beat Mansfield 2-1 off the back of 2 screamers from Charlie Webster, so not a performance to get unbelievably carried away with, but it is mostly the same group of players, or at least very similar player profiles, in that sort of 3-5-2 formation. The midfield I love a lot in Chalk, who sits deep and does the dirty work, and then Webster and McKiernan, who add goal threat and attacking verve. And at the top of the pitch, it's now Jake Beasley, the big man, and Fabio Tavares trying to fill the Burrell mould. I don't know exactly the quality of those two as a duo, but they're not terrible players, and they both look fairly lively in different ways. So I just kind of think that I can bet on a certain level of performance from Burton under Bowyer in this system with this group of players. Whereas with Barnsley, I'm still not entirely clear. And only 3 teams had a worse home record than Barnsley in League One last season. So yes, there's a chance that a feeling of freshness and a good opening day result could blow away those cobwebs, and at Oakwell they might be sparkling all season. But, you know, back end of last season under Hourihane, they were around the 1 point per game mark, while Burton were well above that. So, yeah, taking the draw out, still getting well over 2-1, 14-5, Burton draw no bet. I like that as value in League One this weekend. You've picked out a couple in League Two.
Yeah, a couple more in League Two. I'm really interested in the Crawley-Newport game from a betting perspective because Crawley are 4-9 to win it, which I really struggled to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
They were maybe the most alarmingly poor team on opening day away at Grimsby. That might be Grimsby being very good, but even so, no shots in the first half, 5 shots in total. Just did not look like a cohesive football team in any way whatsoever. And I remember Scott Lindsay was in charge of an MK Dons team who spent a lot of last season not looking like a very cohesive football team in any way whatsoever as well. Up against a Newport side who drew in the Carabao Cup against Barnet away from home, having been 2-0 up going into the 96th minute. They drew 1-1 with Notts County, having led that game for a long period and conceded a penalty. Sure, the underlying numbers aren't great in either, but I think they're showing themselves to be at least competitive. And so this could end up being a game between two of the poorest teams in the league. But I think right now, Crawley are still being perceived as maybe not being so bad, and maybe Newport are being seen to be worse than they are. I would never, I can't see how you can be backing Crawley at 4-9 for this one. Maybe the 6-4 about a Newport or draw also appeals. That's also kind of best price in the market with Sky Bet. Getting with Newport in various ways. And then Barrow are favourites at home to MK Dons. And I'm afraid I'm just not really having that at all.
Right.
So MK at 17-10 is the way I'd play this away from home. I don't think MK Dons can be the price they are for the title and also be this price away at home to Barrow. Like Barrow, are probably fancied because of what they did at the back end of last season under Andy Wing. I wouldn't say there was too much to be excited by on opening day. Same with MK Dons, who weren't great at all, and they would have been expected to beat Oldham and didn't do that. However, it was another game where they conceded very, very little by way of chance. I think Barrow will struggle to kind of lay a glove on them in that respect. And it's going to click at some point, I would have thought, in terms of MK Dons' attacking play. Like, this isn't a case where if MK were the price I thought they would be, which is kind of 6-5-ish or so and favourites to win the game, I wouldn't be getting involved. But I think they have to be the likeliest winner between the two, and they're not being priced up that way.
Yeah, I got a home team to win in League Two, same price as Charlton actually, 29-20, about Fleetwood to win at home to Bristol Rovers. This is a bit of a reaction to a performance that I thought was poor, as well as the result for Bristol Rovers against Harrogate. Now, it was one of those where they dominated the shot count in the first 40 minutes of that game.
Set pieces.
12 of the 13 shots they had were from set piece situations. And yeah, you can be a team that wins a lot of set pieces and delivers them and creates shots from those situations. But for Rovers to be at home to Harrogate and to not have created any chances in that time from open play, and then to have basically fallen off completely from the 40th minute to the 70th minute, during which time they conceded on the break and then didn't respond that well to it and weren't exactly sort of screaming the house down to equalise, quite red flaggy for me. They're at Fleetwood, who won at Barnet. They benefited from a free goal, basically, from Barnet's keeper, and then scored, snatched another chance. They didn't dominate that game by any means. But back at home, in a windy Fleetwood this weekend, I just think they're going to be so much more suited to being ready for this game, being ready to get at it, basically. Connor Taylor's out at the moment for Bristol Rovers, having requested a move away. So Taylor Moore and Alfie Kilgore, the centre-backs. Not a disaster there, but I just think in terms of League Two, defending your box, you probably want Taylor more than you want... Oh, that's a crazy pun. I was going to say you want Taylor more than you want Taylor Moore.
Yeah.
But I meant Connor Taylor more than you want Taylor.
You've blown your mind. You've blown your own mind.
Pete Wild's Fleetwood, I just see right now as a more coherent team than Darryl Clark's Bristol Rovers, who I've got some pretty big concerns about, particularly at the top of the pitch, where I just don't think that group of players are looking particularly good together and haven't for a long time. So the added to the fact that Fleetwood, off the bench, they've got good attacking options in Norwood, Evans, decent midfield options as well. I like him at 29-20 to make it 2 wins in a row and inflict another defeat on the gas. And last but not least, in League Two, a long shot, which sadly, if it wins, would mean your nap is a loser. Tranmere 0, Shrewsbury 0, 7-1 as we record with Sky Bet. It's my second 0-0 pick of this week, and it basically reflects that in Tranmere's first game at Cole U, good start, got ahead, conceded a worldie when looking fairly sturdy overall, 1-1 draw, didn't create loads, and still not sure about their attacking options at all in the squad, Tranmere, but I expect them to be very strong defensively. Shrewsbury, 0-0 draw against Bromley. They defended fine. Bromley had more shots than them, but not many clear-cut chances for Bromley. They've got these beefy centre-backs, don't they, Shrewsbury, who I think at the very least give them some sturdiness defending their box, but they look out of ideas already in attack, quite frankly, and haven't clicked on that front yet. So it's basically the same for both teams. I think much stronger defensively. I think both of them should be good League Two defences, but struggling at the top of the pitch in my eyes. So another 0-0 draw for Shrews on the cards for me at Tranmere. That's at 7-1 with Sky Bet. That brings to an end our 2 season betting previews on the NTT20 betting show, brought to you by Sky Bet for these episodes and all season long. We'll be back again next week where we will settle into the sound of the start of the weekend rhythm. But we've got the championship kicking off in just 2 days' time. Really excited about that. There'll be another pod on the feed tomorrow. Fantasy EFL team reveal for this weekend. Thank you very much for listening to us and supporting us as you do on Not the Top 20. Go very well.